Hello, and welcome back to another series of video lectures. In this series of videos, we're going to talk about Chapter 11. So, Chapter 11 deals with performance measurements in a decentralized organization. So, really, what we're going to be looking at here are organizations or organizational structures that aren't exactly one unit, right? Meaning, we break off decision making capabilities to other branches or maybe lower levels of management. Okay. In addition to that, we're going to get into some evaluation methods, right? So we're going to do a little bit of analysis, and there's going to be some calculations. It's super easy. As long as you can add or subtract and divide, you're fine. Totally easy. Okay. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the return on investment formula, which is actually really, really important that a lot of companies use to evaluate how well they're performing, how efficient and how effectively they're using their assets. Okay, so let's just jump right in. When we're looking at a decentralized organization, we're looking at an organization again that kind of, for lack of a better term, outsources its decision making authority, right? Meaning the top management kind of push down the decision making capabilities to some of the lower level management, right? Let me give you a prime example. I'm sure we all eat at a restaurant, and I'm sure we all had an incident where something didn't go right, right? Maybe the steak was undercooked or overcooked, or you ordered one thing and got something else. So normally what happened was normally the server would say, oh, let me get my manager, right? Then the manager would come over and do something, right? Trying to appease you, maybe get you what you wanted, maybe get you free dessert, whatever, okay? So let's take that same example and look at it from a decentralized organizational framework or a centralized, okay? So let's say, for example, that the CEO makes every decision within the restaurant chain, right? Every decision, okay? So we go and we have an issue with our meal, and the server says, hold on, let me get my manager. And let's say it's an assistant manager. Assistant manager says, you know what? It's above my pay grade. I don't know what to do. I can't make a decision. Can't, comp your meal for you or give you a free dessert. Let me ask my store manager. Go and ask the store manager. Store manager says same thing. Above my pay grade. I can't make that decision. So they push it up to the district manager. District manager says same thing, right? So they keep kicking it all the way up the chain of command until it gets to the top, right? That's kind of a centralized organization, right? And if you think about it, it's not very efficient, right? Especially in taking care of the customer or efficiently managing their operations. So, what a lot of companies do is they decentralize. What they say is, you know what? We're going to give the authority to make decisions to the lower level managers, right? And think about it. Think of the benefits that this allows for. Number one, usually the lower level manager is closer to, again, for lack of a better term, the front lines, right? He or she knows what's going on within that restaurant or within that shop or within that plant, whatever. So since that lower level manager is closer to the front lines, usually, more often than not, they have better information, right? They can make a better decision because they have all pertinent information, right? That information didn't get, filtered and changed as it went up the chain of command, okay? So that's number one. Number two, the lower level managers are quicker or better able to respond to customers. Think about it. If I got to sit there and wait an hour till they get the CEO on the phone to see if I can get my meal for free because they messed it up, I'm not going to be very happy, right? Or if I get a free dessert because they messed up my meal. So the point is, the lower level managers are better able to respond quicker, make better decisions because they have presumably better information. But on the flip side of that, think about the lower level manager. Think if you were in a lower level management position, right? Number one, I would think that would give you some job satisfaction. Hey, I have authority here, right? I can use my brain, analyze all this great information that I have, and respond quickly to fix a problem, okay? That's number one. Number two, as a lower level manager, you are gaining problem solving and decision making experience by handling all these smaller type problems, right? And then finally, it has a better, or it has a advantage to the overall organization because top management is now freed up to look at strategic decisions. Okay, they can focus on the big picture while the lower level managers fix those day-to-day operational problems that arise. Okay, now there are some disadvantages to this, right? Think about it. As a lower level manager, right, we don't have that eye in the sky, so to speak, right? Top level management, CEO, CFO, all those important alphabet soup people, they're able to see the entire playing field. As a lower level manager, you're just focusing on what's in front of you, right? So lower level managers are going to make decisions, but they're not going to have that big picture idea of what needs to happen. They're just solving problems on the spot with no real consideration of how does this affect the big picture, okay? Another problem with that is we lack continuity, right? Excuse me. The lower level managers are acting on their own, right? For the most part, they're autonomous, right? So what one manager does in one store or one restaurant, a different manager in a different restaurant might do something else. So we might go to Max and Irma's, and the only reason why I'm saying that is because I used to work there many, many years ago, right? We go to the downtown location. They mess up our hamburger or our chicken fajitas or whatever. Manager comes out and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You know what? Let me comp your meal for you." Okay, cool, thanks. Then maybe next week we go to a different Max and Irma's restaurant, right? And maybe same thing happens. They mess up our burger or they mess up our chicken fajitas, whatever. And maybe that manager says, "I'm not comping your meal for you. Too bad, so sorry," right? So there's a lack of coordination among managers, and especially within the overall policies and procedures of the corporation, right? Those lower level managers are, number one, autonomous. Number two, what objectives are they following, right? Are they following the policies and procedures that are established by the corporation that should be the same regardless of which restaurant you go to, or do they have their own objectives, right? That's a problem with decentralization, okay? Another difficulty with decentralization is, think about the communication, right? We don't have one person at the top communicating everything, right? So what one store's doing, maybe another store doesn't find out about, or if maybe one store's doing, the manager comes up with a great idea that they're, really increases the efficiency and the effectiveness of how they run their operations. Maybe somebody or a manager in another store needs that information, but because they're autonomous, they don't communicate, they're not getting that good ideas, or they're not spreading those good ideas, okay? So we mentioned responsibility accounting before. We talked about it, and we said that responsibility accounting basically says we only hold people accountable for the things that they can control, right? So when we're looking at responsibility centers, we have three types of centers. We have a cost center, a profit center, and an investment center. Three totally different centers which have three totally different responsibilities. When we look at the cost center, right? And if you just think about the cost center, it's a part of the company or a part of the organization that's basically just responsible for costs, right? So what we need to recognize is that if we have a manager who's in the cost center, we cannot hold that person accountable for the revenue or the profit center results or the investment center results, okay? The only control or the only thing that manager can control is the costs, okay? So when we're looking at a cost center, let me give you a prime example. I used to work at a company. I used to work in the back office of a broker-dealer, and I worked the trading desk, okay? We were nothing more than a cost center because we didn't generate revenue. We didn't invest in anything. We just cost the company money, but we were providing a service to all the advisors. We were, processing their paperwork and working on compliance issues and placing trades for them and things like that. But our manager shouldn't be responsible for how much investment income the firm generates or how much revenue the firm brings in, because that's not the manager's job in that department. That manager just needs to manage the costs, and that's all that we can hold them accountable for, okay? Now, when we're looking at a profit center, right? In a profit center, this segment says, you know what? The manager has control over both costs and revenue, okay? So let's kind of flip the script a little bit, and let's say we're looking at a manufacturing plant. We make widgets. That manager of that plant is responsible for sales or for revenue, right? How much revenue is your plant generating? Well, you need to get out there and make some sales, right? That person is also responsible for the cost within that profit center, right? Things like manufacturing costs that person can control, commissions, salaries, utility expenses. All the operating expenses are under the direct control of that segment manager of the profit center. And if we go back to the restaurant idea, a store manager within a restaurant or a store manager within a retail chain, they are responsible for their store, right? They can control, for the most part, the sales revenue that their store generates. They are responsible for the costs that their store generates, right? The commission, the salaries, things like that. Okay, so when we're looking at an investment center manager has control over costs, revenues, and investments within operating assets, okay? So we're looking more here at the investment center of more like the finance department, okay? Is the finance department investing in efficient equipment or efficient machines, right? That investment center has control over the cost of the machines that go into the plant, the revenue that machine hopefully generates, and the cost of that machine as well, okay? So really the only big takeaway from this section of the chapter is just recognizing what are the benefits and the disadvantages of a decentralized organization, and then recognizing that there are three different cost centers three different centers when we're talking about responsibility accounting, okay? When we come back, we're going to jump into ROI. We're going to see how to calculate return on investment, and we're going to see how, if we have changes in our sales or expense or our assets, or how they're going to impact the ROI. So tune back in for that one.